Wrapping up 2025, there are 3 stories that we had in mind that we just have to share them, and we're going to break it down right now.
Welcome to the Private Lenders Podcast with your host from Hard Money Bankers, Jason Valen and Chris Haddon. This podcast is sponsored by hardmoneymastermind.com.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for checking out the show. Real quick, if you haven't done so already, go check out lendersoftware.com, Lendr software.com. The founder of the software, Bryce Matheson, is a member of the Mastermind group, and his software is really gaining popularity quickly within the private lending community. So go check it out, Lendr software.com. All right. We're telling a couple stories today. It's going to be good. It's been a good year. All in all, it has been a solid year, profitable. There's always some wild stuff that goes on in this business. If you haven't seen it yet, you just haven't been around long enough or haven't done enough deals, because us and some other people in the Mastermind group and people that we chat on our monthly training, there's some weird things that pop up in this industry and private lending and real estate investment in general. Like there's just some shit that goes down.
No doubt. And it takes time. It's funny, sometimes I'll talk to some lenders and be like, hey, I don't have any defaults yet, or I've done this many loans and everything's pretty cut and dry. And I'm like, you just wait. Like, I hate to say it, but you just see so much stuff. The borrowers that you would never think would default. A deal who potentially you thought was clean commits fraud. There's just a lot of unknown things that you'll see over time. That takes time, and that's kind of why we're all about slow and steady wins the race. Don't jump into this business and just start doing tons and tons of deals overnight before you see loans cycling through and getting capital back. It's important to kind of grow, at a reasonable pace, because things will happen. And just like anything else in life, as soon as you think you have it figured out, you just get sideswiped just out of the blue. You take your guard down and you get sideswiped. And like to this day, we still see things that we never would imagine have happened. So not that these 3 deals, although one of the stories we're about to tell is something that was new, but all 3 of these deal stories were slightly different. And I mean, it's a fun adventure and a learning adventure every day. And you just make sure you're writing good loans on a regular basis. And, you're in a good collateral position. You're writing loans to a good characteristic borrower that has the capacity, that has, credit that will grant them this particular type of loan scenario that you're working on with them. And, things should work out for the best.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is that we aren't servicing a Fannie Mae type of portfolio here. We just aren't. These aren't just, vanilla primary residence mortgages where everyone pays on time, which is not the case. Different business. All right, let's get into the first one. So this one is a fraud and title claim situation that just resolved recently. And here's how it started. So we had lent to this particular borrower 4 or 5 times successfully. He never missed a payment. He did his construction job. He's kind of a, run-of-the-mill fix and flip guys in South Jersey. And he'd buy properties in the 200K range and put 60 or 70 into it, sell it for 400, just median housing price, normal routine stuff. And so we did a loan for him. This was in the spring of 24, I believe, where he owned a property already. And we did a loan of $225,000 with a construction holdback. He already owned it, free and clear. So it's a refinance with construction. And we hold, maybe it was 60K or something like that, a construction holdback. And he, like normal, closes on the property, closes on the loan, and then starts doing construction work quickly. And we dispersed out all the funds, 60K, I think it was, within like a normal time frame, like 2 months, maybe 10 weeks, something like that. Property was done. ARV is 400, conservatively, probably more. And right around that time, he stops paying us. And we're like, okay. Little weird. And we see normally, if the property hit the market for sale, we wouldn't think much of it. We'd be like, all right, maybe short on cash. Let's communicate with him and see when he's going to sell this. We'll collect our interest in. Even though he hadn't missed a payment before. But in this particular case, he's not communicating with us, and this property does not get listed for sale, even though the construction work was done. And we're like, huh. And since he's not communicating with us, we have no choice but to start foreclosure. So we get the law firm to do that, send a default letter, start foreclosure work. And we don't get too far into it when they pull title work. And this is when it gets wild. This is when it breaks wide open. We pull title work as one of the first steps in foreclosure. And we realized that he had taken out 5 or 6 similar looking mortgages from private lenders like us all in the same week. He closed all of them. It was either 5 or 6. I don't recall exactly which one. We'll say 5. He closed all 5 loans, ours being one of the 5, in the same week with 5 different title companies. Because if they were overlapping title companies, they would know fraud was going on. They wouldn't do it. And so he ended up borrowing something like 1.25 on a property that with an ARV of 400, maybe a little more, 4 to 450. And yeah, I mean, and all names that we knew in the industry, all names that you would know in the industry, being the other lenders he borrowed from. You know, pat on the back, our loan amount was the lowest because that's how we roll. But they were ranging from 225 to 272, I think it was.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that part, that we were the lowest.
We were the lowest,
which was good. I mean, they're mostly a lot of institutional lenders as well, so that's why their loan amounts were funky, funky figures and higher amounts. Wait, was this in a week or a day? Like how many? Because typically, like this was the first time we got hit with this fraud that we know of. But I mean, I've seen this in the past. I've saw it on an American Greed episode, like early on when we were getting into the private lending business. And in essence, it was all kind of simultaneously where, if each title company had known about it, and here's the other thing, it would have also probably had to be different title insurers, right? Westcor, Old Republic,
First American, Chicago.
First American.
So
Chicago.
I don't know. It was definitely different title companies. I don't know if the borrower could have predicted that they're writing through different insurers. Yeah. I don't know. That might have been a gamble on his part. But yeah, it wasn't in the same day. It all closed in a week. And then all of these get on record at different times based on, in that county, the title company sends the recording documents to the office and they actually get on record. And one of the weird parts about a situation like this, one of the weird things is that it actually is a race to get recorded. If you're chronologically recorded first, you're the first lien position, even though we all have title insurance saying we're the first lien position. So I don't want this story to drag out the entire podcast, so I'm going to keep it moving along a little bit. One thing that happened here is that we typically get 120% of our loan amount as title insurance. And 9 times out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, the title company gives that to us with no problem. For some reason, in this particular case, and this was just kind of a stroke of luck, they insured it not for 120%, they insured it for 200%. Instead of 225 loan amount, we looked at the policy once this gets going. We expected to see 120%. It was $450,000 on a 225 loan. Straight up, just stroke of luck. Although we would have been fine. We would have been fine on the 120%. Okay, so now everybody's on high alert. Everyone knows a straight up fraud has been committed. And the title companies, they alert all their insurers. They let the lenders know in case they hadn't started foreclosure and weren't aware of it yet. And the title insurers call the authorities. Like we were contacted by the FBI for a loan file. We're like, okay, FBI is not the first time. Doesn't happen that often. But here you go, FBI, here's a loan file. We don't hear anything from the borrower. At some point, he has an attorney representing him. I have no idea what's going on with the case. I don't ask. He reaches out to us to see if we could talk to him, and we're like, no response at all. Like, we're not getting involved in that. So the title insurer wants to try to litigate to get us into first position. I think ours was recorded maybe 3rd or 4th in line, just chronologically, just based on when the title company gets the documents to the recording office. But the insurer wants to hire an attorney, as they often do, so we don't have to pay him. It's paid by the insurer to litigate this to try to get us into first position. And I told this attorney, like, this is kind of silly. Like, we're not getting in first position. There's no, every lender's in the same spot. We all got defrauded. The only one who's in first position is literally the one who got on record first. He's like, I know, but I can't just go back to him and say, this is not going to happen. I have to, like, they're paying me. I have to like file a case and do some stuff. I'm like, all right, waste of time to me. But it seems like that's the process they have to follow. Fast forward like 6 months or so, they're like, yep, we're not getting in first position. Here's what is happening in the court case, and kicks it back to the insurer to like, let's start talking about paying the claim. And our attorney's involved this entire time, doing a great job for us. She did in this situation for sure. And then it's some back and forth with the insurer. They're an insurance company, so they try to postpone and delay. And, you know, that's their business. That's what they do. And then they come back with, well, we think the property is only worth $250,000. So according to the insurance documents, we have to pay you the lesser of the indebtedness or the policy amount or the property value. And so the lowest number in their mind is the property value. They're like, oh, it's worth $250. We go back and look, and it wasn't worth $250. All the work had been done. It was worth over $400. So we get an appraisal. We say, here it goes, $400. Our total payoff is somewhere in the threes at this point. And then earlier this month, or maybe end of last month, they're like, you know what? Yep, you're full. The lowest number in this is your indebtedness, meaning your full payoff with attorney's fees, default interest, late fees, everything. And we're going to FedEx you a check. We're like, done deal. Done deal. It dragged out for 18 months, about, 18 months in a default situation with a good exit.
Here's the other kind of funny part about this guy. Not only did he defraud everybody and take out 5 loans, he also did construction on the property so he could get 5 construction draws, 5 sets of construction draws. So what was the construction amount? 60?
I think it was 60.
Okay. So in essence, he did that 5 times. So he got that money too.
He got draws from all these lenders too.
I don't know what he was trying to get away with, what he thinks he's going to get away with. Like, I will say, though, we have been told by legal counsel in the past, if there is a legal file and like a title claim, don't interfere and communicate with anybody that's not on your side of it, because the last thing you want is the title insurer saying that you're interfering with their investigation and then them having a cause to not pay out your claim, because that's come up before in the past when like, let's say the borrower called and be like, oh, hey, I can pay it off. Don't even communicate. Like, talk to your attorney and figure out what they recommend in this particular case. But yeah, it was an interesting one. And typically with title, we've had a lot of title insurance claims over the years, and you don't typically know what the title company or the title insurer is going to do. Sometimes we'll get full payoff, sometimes we'll just get principal, sometimes we'll get other stuff. It's kind of a crapshoot across the board based on who they are and what it was. But it kind of worked out that we weren't recorded first, because if we were recorded first, we would have had to go through the entire foreclosure process.
That's right.
Which could have been a good thing too. Could have taken ownership of a nice property. So anyways, all right, let's move on to the next story from 2025 that we had to share. This is a borrower that owns a lot of commercial properties all over the area. And again, that first story we've been wanting to share for a while. It's just, knock on wood, we like to wait until they're closed and matured out before we publicly share them. So anyways, this other particular one was a borrower that we did a few loans for, starting during COVID time all the way until maybe 2 years ago, call it. So we had 3.5-4 year run on doing deals. Her and her family owned a lot of free and clear commercial buildings. And just like a lot of commercial property owners sometimes, is they'll have a lot of trapped equity. They'll have a lot of equity in these properties, and they do cash flow, but it's hard for them to get large sums of cash when needed. And an example of a large sum of cash that a property owner might need is like a capital improvement. So like, for instance, she'd own a building, let's call it $1 million, and be like, hey, I need to replace the HVAC system or do some like tenant improvements, and I need like $200,000 type of thing. And like, to me, I'm like, and Chris, we're like, $200,000, like, you should be able to get that. Like, you have dozens and dozens of buildings and millions of dollars in global cash flow that comes in. But regardless, so, gave her a low LTV loan. We knew, because every commercial deal is hard with exit strategies, even if the borrowers have good credit and decent financials, it's still hard to get exit. It's still hard to have an exit strategy. And they had a hard time paying it off. So, they kept making payments. We kept, no problem. We kept extending the loan, had some late fees, or had some extension fees, 3-point extension fees year after year, things like that. And then another deal would come in a similar situation. Then another deal would come in with a similar situation. Another deal would come in with a similar situation. And I think we did 8 loans in
Right around there.
In 4 years, call it. And, keep in mind, our total exposure might have been like $3.5 million on 8 pretty nice commercial properties. And I think most people would look at that portfolio and be like, oh man, that's a no-brainer. Like that's an easy loan to do. And it is a safe loan to do, but you also got to know what you're up against. You're getting yourself in a position where the borrower is taking expensive debt from you over and over and over and over and doesn't really have means of paying it back and ways of paying it back. And then over time, they miss a payment, and then or they skip they miss another payment. And payments are high. I mean, 13% interest on $3.5 million over time. Even if there's a lot of cash flow coming in, it's expensive. So then payments get missed, and then it's like, hey, listen, we're gonna have to send this to our attorney's office and potentially start a foreclosure process if you can't get cut off. Then they'll get caught up, right? And then they'll get behind again. Then they'll get caught up. Then they'll bounce a payment and they'll do this. And eventually it got to the point with us that it was just kind of annoying. We're like, we just need to get paid off on these things. Like, it's annoying. Consistent money's not coming in on these things. We're in a good collateral position, but we also keep in mind, we're charging extension fees year after year after year. And it's just it's a situation where assets turn into liabilities very, very quickly if they're not serviced and if they're outstanding for too long of a period of time. And the last thing we want is to eat up equity of this family's portfolio because they have expensive debt. So, we refer them to some people to try to get some cheaper long-term capital for and things like that. Fast forward until end of last year, let's call it, we're going to file foreclosure. You got to do what we got. And there's no bad blood, right? They weren't pissed off at us type of thing. It was you got to do what you got to do to pay us off. This is what we need. We got to get this thing paid off. Long story short, they finally got it paid off by another hard money lender. And, if you do the math of being behind, having extension fees, potentially default interest, it turned into a good outcome and a good payday. But the reason that deal worked out so well is because we originated that loan the right way on the front end. We originated that loan on the front end, and we had capital associated with that deal that, wasn't pressed to get paid off in 6 months or 12 months. We knew it was going to be outstanding for a long period of time, and the LTVs were low enough, and it could absorb the costs. And it worked out as it continued. It worked out kind of because she did have cash flow from other assets, that could cover the payments and things like that. But at some point it was hey, enough is enough. And the only thing that this is more of an ethics thing. I was concerned that the person that refinanced us was just going to take advantage of them and just foreclose as a loan to own strategy. But I think they've been in good standing with them for the most part and trying to get out of it.
So the only reason that we defaulted them is because we were pretty much forced into it. They were performing for a long time, payments by ACH, no problem. But then they started coming apart where they were bouncing and we had to chase them around, and just a real lack of organization on their part, which, mind you, is also why they couldn't get long-term debt, is that their books just weren't together. The people running this operation did not have the proper accounting going on for these dozens and dozens of properties that they owned and were occupied by tenants, retail stuff, residential, all kinds of properties. And it wasn't a cash flow problem. It was just an organization problem. And so once they started bouncing payments to us and then getting caught up and bouncing again, after a while, we just got sick of it and we had to default them. And their end of the day game plan is they're getting help from some people that they do business with that advise them in this stuff. And even though they had to get another bridge loan to pay us off, they're going to end up selling some properties to retire that private debt and get back to that free and clear position that they were in once this current generation took over. But Yeah, I mean, it worked out for them. They were able to accomplish what they needed. We had a good exit with a bunch of extension fees on one side, also a servicing fee from the loans that have been way delinquent. So good resolution for all. I would call it a win-win scenario. They got the cash they needed. We earned interest over a handful of years plus some fees and got out of the deal clean.
Yeah. Win. All right, let's go through the third creative story. Or not necessarily creative story, but third story from 2025 that we had to share. Several creative loans that we did for one out-of-state real estate investor who purchased 3 properties locally, lives out of state, and we, collateral was good on all of them. We weren't sure if the character of the borrower was like A+ or B-, or maybe A+ or C+. That's probably the right way to say it. Like, he had a lot of cash, he had a lot of capital. The reason that we questioned the character slightly is because we felt like the deals weren't all that good that he was buying. And typically when borrowers buy deals that I feel aren't great investment deals, and maybe, sometimes you put yourself in the wrong person's shoes and you're just like, well, I don't think these are great deals. Other people might think they're great deals. So that's why I say he might have been very strong or he might have been very weak. I just didn't fully know at the time. And actually his credit was only so-so. And for someone that had that much cash, and and assets and free and clear assets, a lot of his other free and clear assets were on the other side of the country. They were in states we didn't want to collateralize stuff in. But anyways, so was the big deal, was the $1.5 million deal the first deal we did, Chris, or was that the second or third deal?
They all closed around the same time frame, but I also
Okay.
just want to add in one detail that he was acquiring properties in Miami, in Georgetown in Washington, D.C., and also in Annapolis, Maryland, which is a waterfront, very high-end area. So he's laying out a lot of capital to buy some high-end real estate at around the same time in 3 different markets. And we're like, okay, how can we come in a creative and safe way and make this all happen? I don't remember which one closed first, but they're all in the same time frame. They're all within 60 days of each other, I'd say.
Yeah. So anyways, we did, all the loans were sub 40 LTV, mostly because if you ever heard, our scripting videos about how we script and how we anchor loans, we try to anchor and start loan amounts pretty low, but also deals that are kind of funky deals in general. We just want to be at lower LTVs. Right. And so, and 2 of them, I don't know. Anyways, 2 of them were at 40 LTV deals, and he seemed to have enough cash to, but were they purchases or refinances? Now I'm thinking they might have been refinances, come to think about it, the other 2. So anyways, the main one we did, he was buying for $6 million and we let him 1.5 and
1.65.
1.65. Okay. So we let him 1.65 on $6 million. He had a bunch of other big assets that he was selling. So originally he came to us because he's like, hey, I think I have enough to buy this in cash, but I might not. So we gave him 1.65. And again, our spidey senses went up a little bit. It was like, hey, is this guy A+? This guy's C-? Is there fraud? Is there not?
Yeah,
it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen all the time that somebody's doing a $6 million acquisition and they're bringing $4.5 million to the table. It's just you don't see it all that often. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. And I don't think there was 1031 money associated with it. So anyways, that deal ends up closing fine. No problems on that. He misses a payment here and there. He gets caught up. He's got a lot to lose, right, on this deal. And then spring break, because I remember I was in Hilton Head when this happened. Because I was talking to
let's cover the 2 that paid off first.
Okay, go through that, and then I'll tell you about, and then we'll talk about the modification.
Yeah, so the DC property and the Miami property were both around 700,000 loan amounts on properties worth way more than that, right? And they both exited. This is one, I think one was refinanced, the one in DC was refinanced, and the one in Miami sold. So we were out of 2 of these deals, which made us feel good about the one outstanding loan, the big one, 1.65, on that big Annapolis property until it came time for that loan to mature. But we had already exited 2. All right, so jump back in there when he comes back to us.
Yeah. So he reached out and was like, hey, this is a year loan. I'm going to need some sort of an extension. And we're like, well, you've been making payments. Like, this is expensive type of thing. Like, how are you going to get paid off? He's like, well, I've been trying to sell the property for a lot higher and I haven't been getting hits, because he was pushing the market on this and he was trying to make a lot of money. And he's like, I don't want to sell it for what I paid for it, then I'm not making any more money. And we're like, yeah, but if you keep paying 13% and you're in the same situation in a year from now, like you're hundreds of thousands of dollars, in cost. So we came up with an agreement that we would do a refinance, not an extension. We would do a full refinance if he brought cash to the table and he paid down our exposure and our principal. So I think originally, what's our current loan on our books now? 1.5?
So it was 1.65 and the new loan amount was 1.5.
Got it.
So you had to pay the 150 plus all the closing costs.
Exactly. So originally we were like, hey, I'd like to get this down to like 1.25. Like we started lower, bring 500 grand or whatever, 400 grand to the table plus closing costs. And he was like, I can bring like 200 or so to the table. So again, our exposure went down by 150,000. Whenever you do kind of extensions, modifications, stuff like that, like it's not a bad idea to try to do a principal reduction when you can, especially in some of the commercial loans or the deals that don't really have a full exit strategy. Just try to get your exposure reduced a little bit. So that's what we did in that particular case. The other 2 loans paid off, no problem. This one's still outstanding on our books, but it was kind of a creative, interesting one that, went from a borrower that we were slightly unsure about to a borrower that, we're comfortable with. And again, it's funny. Like, I feel like there's borrowers out there that we lend to that I'm very comfortable lending to them, but I'm only, we're only comfortable lending to them with a lot of skin in the deal type of thing. Because I'm not concerned about fraud. I'm not concerned about them being like shady. It's just one of those things that like, they're probably going to miss payments. They might not prioritize us first in the transaction, but they're not going to maliciously try to screw you. So it's like, hey, I'm happy to lend you money. You just got to put your money where your mouth is and have a big down payment. And I also know that we can get away with doing that because most other lenders aren't going to give them the time of day because they're going to be rubbed the wrong way based on them. But like, you build a good enough relationship with somebody, it's still a deal that makes sense.
All right, everyone, that is the pod for today and the last one for this year. We appreciate you following the Private Lenders podcast. We hope you had a wonderful year in the world of hard money lending. Looking forward to seeing you in 2026. Until then, come check us out at hardmoneymastermind.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders podcast. Please note that the opinions stated by all the speakers on this show are only opinions and not intended for legal, financial, or accounting advice. Please make sure to always check with your own legal, accounting, and financial professionals. If you enjoyed this episode of the Private Lenders podcast, we'd appreciate it if you would spread the word. Make sure to check out hardmoneymastermind.com, the #1 free community for new and experienced private and hard money lenders.